a nice sunny day. Anyway, the first thing I want to talk about was the fact that this is turning out to be not a great holiday season for one significant reason, and that is the economy. So yesterday, my family and I took a little trip to a tree cutting farm. And this has been our tradition for years now. We like to go cut our own tree, even though the last 2 years prior to this, excuse me, we've been unable to find a tree suitable for cutting down at the farms that we've visited because partly they've been cleaned out. One told us last year that they had been cleaned out by large box stores that had bought up a lot of their supply. And then our favorite one that we had used for a few years, they closed because they didn't have anybody that wanted to continue the family tradition of running it. So they just decided to stop growing Christmas trees. So that was a bummer. So yesterday, after much research of areas and local tree farms that we can go cut down our own tree, we settled on one that wasn't too far from our house. We got there and they didn't have a very good selection, and in fact, excuse me, the kind of tree that we wanted to get, they were either much too small or much too large. So we were going to settle for a cut tree. We found a nice one, Fraser fir. Went to go pay for it after having it brought up the hill from the fields. Excuse me, sorry guys, very dry this morning. So we got up to pay for it, and the guy in front of me went to pay for, I assumed, more than one tree. He handed a ticket in, that's how you paid for your tree, and rung up at $120 something. And I saw that price and I said, "Sir, did you buy more than one tree?" And he said, "No, it's one tree." And I noticed his ticket indicated that his tree was 8 feet. And I looked at my ticket, mine said 8.5. Now, first of all, it wasn't any 8.5 feet tall. So I asked the lady, I said, "How much will mine be?" And it was going to be 143, and that was without tax. So I just turned around, walked out, and said to my family, "We're not getting a tree here." Because I knew at least the grocery stores would have them for about a third that price if we really wanted to get a Fraser fir. So on the way home, there was this other place we'd gotten a tree from last year, and they have pre-cut only. So it wasn't going to be the cutting down experience, but at this point, my kids didn't care. They'd had the experience of searching for one that was fine with them. So we picked out one. It was actually a little bit better looking, had a prettier leaf, and it was $81 for about equivalent size. Tree costs have gone up tremendously, and we're seeing that with every single thing. So we've cut down our ability to produce our own fuel, thus partly helping drive up fuel costs tremendously. Same time last year, or at least coming to the end of the year in Trump's presidency, prices of the gas were significantly cheaper, thus making shipping costs less. There were more people working, thus you had more drivers, so that could bring goods to places, helping keep costs down. And it's just on and on. The supply chain issue is not just the container ships off the coast in California. It's because we have people sitting at home getting government checks, not having to worry about working because they're willing to just barely get by eating Cheetos and playing their video games. So the rest of us suffer by paying exorbitant fees. One of the things that was pointed out was under the Trump administration, we saw not only records in people's wages, but we also saw that they were actually improving their wealth standard against the value of the dollar. Recently, Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, was lauding that there was some growth economically. Biden is on record as saying something about growth economically. The fact of the matter is, in most recent data shows that the cost of living is outpacing cost of wage increase. In other words, people are not making as much for their bang for their buck, or getting as much bang for their buck, even though they're getting paid more. So if cost increase outpaces cost wage increase, there's no gain. And so this is turning out to be a very unmerry Christmas in some sectors. And the trees are just one example. Now, shifting topics, not entirely completely because this has just been handled so poorly. We now have the origin or the coming out of Omicron. Now, what is Omicron? Well, Omicron is just a Greek letter by itself, at least. It's pretty far into the alphabet, in the Greek alphabet. It looks like one of our O's. We might have gotten the name O from Omicron. I don't know. I didn't look that up. But I do know Greek somewhat. A little rusty on my Greek. But anyway, Omicron. We have the Omicron variant of the, the thing, the virus. And so there's all this concern about it coming out. I would encourage you, and I'm no virologist, okay? YouTube, I'm no virologist. I'm just a lowly physical therapist. But I would encourage you to look up some research and do yourself a favor. Try to find research before the fall of 2019. You'd probably be safe with most anything in 2019 and earlier on how viruses replicate, and especially look for studies that have to do with the evolution of a virus and its virulence, its ability to do damage, whether cause disease, get people deathly ill, death rate, things like that. One of the things that seems to be common for most viruses, and there have been some exceptions, so we can't say this is 100%, but most viruses, as they progress, as they evolve, and so we're up to Omicron with this current issue, this current virus, which I shall not name, we're up to the Omicron variant, which is very far along. We're seeing increased susceptibility to catching it, but there does appear to be a significantly reduced rate of death. Now, some might say, well, partly we have reduced death because we have more people, have taken the hokey pokey. That may be the case, but what's interesting about Omicron is that it's showing high levels of ability to go around the hokey pokey. So you have people who have gotten these shots who think that they're all set, they're all protected, and yet they're proving to be possibly just as susceptible to Omicron as those of us who have chosen not to get the hokey pokey. So you can't use that as an argument and saying, well, it's reduced death rates because people have been, hokey pokey. The issue with the Omicron virus, and if you look at older studies on virology, it appears that it will be more contagious, but it will be less deadly. And but they're going to say this is a great concern. And so anyway, I would encourage you to read up some. You don't have to do a lot of deep reading on older studies before 2020 about how viruses do evolve. Do we have great concern? Because there's going to be ongoing variations. And the fact that we're up to Omicron with the current virus indicates there's been quite a few variants that have occurred, and they've come and gone. They haven't made the news. Omicron's making the news because it's the new one. It's probably going to be, if history proves true, that the virus will become less deadly, but more likely to be spread over time. And therefore, at some point it's going to be like the common colds. And didn't we learn that the common cold is itself a COVID kind of virus? Obviously it didn't originate in the same place. But anyway, the news is going to have to perpetuate this whole fear-mongering thing. And governments are just happy, probably, to be able to do this because it increases their ability to control, to push the narrative that you need the hokey pokey, thus driving up their coffers. because we know the pharmaceutical companies are in bed with governments. I don't think anybody can say otherwise. Anyway, that's all I got for today. John Adamson with Seeking Light. I hope that you enjoy this beautiful weekend. Hopefully, it's beautiful where you are. We're going to put up our tree today, our slightly less expensive tree. Well, 2/3 the cost of the first one we went to look at. Thank you, Joe Biden. By the way, I got to finish up with this. There's this lady who writes a blog, and she found that her blog was being throttled by YouTube, by Google. So she decided in every single blog post, she would write a blurb saying, I love Joe Biden, or some variant of that. And as long as she put that, she found that her views went astronomically up. I mean, statistically significantly improved viewability by just putting the phrase, I love Joe Biden in it. Isn't that interesting? So maybe I should start saying in my videos, I love Joe Biden. Because frankly, as a Christian, I do love him as a human being. He's a completely idiotic person in terms of his viewpoints. He needs to be taken out of office. He's unfit for command, but I still love him. And maybe that'll help my viewability. I don't know. Anyway, take care. God bless. Have a great day.